Parents, listen up. The mental health and well being of your family begins with you. And if you're feeling the weight of stress, burnout, or just the never ending pressures of parenthood, this episode is for you. According to the US Surgeon General, parents today are experiencing higher levels of stress than ever before, and the effects go far beyond our own mental health. It impacts the well being of our kids, especially when we're struggling to stay afloat ourselves. In fact, did you know that one third of parents report high stress levels compared to just one fifth of other adults? And when that stress becomes severe or prolonged, it's not only hurting us, but it's affecting our children in ways we might not even realize. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome a true leader in children's mental health, Dr. Roseann Cappana-Hodge. She's here to share her deeply personal journey through burnout as a parent and healthcare professional, and to provide us with actionable, science-backed strategies for calming the brain and creating a healthy, more harmonious family life. Dr. Roseann has been seen firsthand how dysregulation can wreak havoc on both children and parents. And she's going to break down exactly what that looks like in everyday life. How can we recognize the signs before it's too late? What's happening inside our nervous system when we're feeling overwhelmed or depleted? And more importantly, what can we do to regulate and calm the brain, not just for ourselves, but for our kids too? She'll also be sharing at the end how you can join her Calm Parenting 7-Day Challenge along with amazing tools and resources. This conversation is essential for any parent or caregiver who's tired of living in constant stress mode. So grab a cup of tea, take a deep breath, and join me for this impactful discussion. Let's get started.
Burnout's kicking in hard, feels like a war zone. Can't keep dragging my feet, lost in the unknown. Caribou jeans got the plan to lift me higher. Real self-care mantra, spark that fire. Energize, optimize, break the chains down. Feel the power in me, I'm gonna show now. Let the real self-care rekindle my spark. No more shadows, living strong in the dark.
Roseann, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you today and all of the amazing tools that you are bringing to this conversation.
I'm so excited too, because I know how hard it is to be a mom and how hard it is to be a mom of neurodivergent kids. And they're just much more prone to burnout. So this conversation is going to change lives.
And I'll tell you, as also a late identified autistic ADHD mom, that is a whole level of stress and burnout to navigate. And when we're burned out, in my research over the last going on 4 years now into burnout for neurodistinct and disabled people of all ages, most of the largest number of people, as I have done this research and in interviews, when we do that burnout history, we're showing that burnout is actually on-ramping between the ages of 4 and 6. And the first burnout for most autistic kiddos is hitting between age 6 and age 8.
And that's shocking to people because they don't understand, right? Like we think of mental health or nervous system dysregulation, that there has to always be an event. There's always a traumatic event or something bad happened, right? But what's happening is our brains, our bodies are changing. There's a lot of reason why, there's more neurodivergence. About 25% of the US population is identified as neurodivergent. We're not including overall mental health issues, but the average age of anxiety is age 6. And people say, what do you mean age 6? It's such a great time. Well, it's not as simple. Our nervous systems get activated for a variety of reasons. It's not just because one bad thing happened or a series of bad things. It can be diet, it can be neuroinflammation, it can be genetic issues, and it can be chronic stress around a child, maybe an inappropriate learning environment, sensory processing issues. It can be a lot of things. And I think for parents who are on that journey, maybe they're neurodivergent themselves, which happens a lot too, or they're seeing these signs in their kids and they're not really sure what they are, but boy, are they stressful for both the child and the parent.
Oh, absolutely. And when you don't have a framework to identify, I remember at one point, I just felt like I was going crazy. I felt like I
Yeah.
was losing my mind and it was scary. And, I had young kids at the time. And so then you're worrying and panicking, thinking, oh my gosh, am I being just this horrible parent? And all of the stuff that comes with it. And Roseanne, I love to talk to all of my guests and open the show with the opportunity for each of us to share our burnout experience
Yeah.
and what that has felt like. And I would love for you to share, because you said, I had a heck of a year this past year.
Yes.
What has burnout
Yeah.
felt like and been for you?
Yeah. And I'm going to say this is the second major burnout I've had, and I should know better, right? And of course the first time was I'm a mother of a child with PANS, which has to do with neuroinflammation in the body attacking itself, and it was a toxin trigger. And that was a long, slow burnout because I kept chasing the right treatment. And I was acting like it was a sprint and nobody told me it was a marathon. And once you get the marathon mentality, you're like, hold on, I need to eat the carbs. I need to do all these things. And then I change and I recover from that burnout. But 2023 actually was one of the hardest years of my life. And it started with that. I'm definitely a creative. I have a lot of things going on. I'm on this mission to change the way we view and treat mental health, and I am making an impact, but with my excitement, because what is also surprising is good and bad stress, your nervous system doesn't know the difference. And I think that's shocking, right? And so I'm the kind of person, I wrote a 431 page book in 31 days, and I'm not manic. Like, I just get excited and I'm like, I can do it. And writing is very easy for me and I'm super passionate about it. I love it. So in the end of 2022, my mom passed away, and my mom, I'm first generation American from Italy. My whole family's in Italy. We were the only ones here. So we were like a close family. And my mom, it was her time to go. She was suffering. She had bone cancer. It's still very hard. So I was like, this has been good for my mom. Like, I have to be okay. So it started with grief. And so then it quickly rolled into, which I know is my red flag for burnout, 2 illnesses. I got RSV, then pneumonia. So that then, yep. So then I was like, I'm better. And then I push. I didn't stop and do recovery, which we should talk about. Then I get pneumonia again. And this time I didn't have a choice. Like, I had to take the time to recover, and I forced myself to do that. And I think the lesson here, first of all, grief is grief, and it's going to show up whether you like it. I'm not saying I didn't process it and deal with it, but it showed up much more in my body. Those are my symptoms of stress, is I tend to get physical symptoms. We all have different symptoms. And I should have seen the danger signs, the slow down when you're speeding and they leave the random sign up to let you know. And I should have slowed down and taken care of myself. But I thought, I'm doing enough, but I wasn't doing enough. And I think the worst thing I did was really shortcut my sleep. And I was used to sleeping less. And then, of course, all this perimenopausal stuff happens in the middle of all this, right? Right.
Right. That's a whole new fishbowl.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Right. And so, so the biggest lesson is, just because you think you got it, if your body is telling you something different, you must stop. You must make changes, because you can't run on empty. And so I really had to do a lot of care, because I said to myself, with that second pneumonia, if I get COVID, I don't know if I'll make it from COVID. Like, if you're that down, I was in full adrenal burnout. Like, there was no firing happening at that time. And I'm really good. Like, I'm one of those people that used to brag. I can brag that I really don't need a lot of sleep. And I've changed that, and I've really prioritized sleep. Which is very hard for a mother to prioritize sleep. So I didn't have babies at 20. I had my last at 39, so I still have a 13-year-old at home. And so mothering is different, right, at every stage, but you must prioritize. And it's not, I think the thing about, we talked about self-care is sort of like being this vague thing. I have a really concrete routine. Like, I must take a certain number of magnesium baths a week, right? I must make sure I exercise a minimum 3 times a week, right? Ideally, it's like, for me, it's 5 to 7 times a week. But sleep, no messing around on sleep, getting the sleep hygiene tight. And no matter what, whether you think you're like Dr. Roseann and you can shortcut sleep, nobody can shortcut sleep. Some of us need crazy amounts of sleep. That's not me. My girlfriend sleeps like 12 hours. I'm like, 12 hours? I mean, that's
No
crazy.
way. And there's like these different seasons of sleep, right?
Yes.
As we age, we require different amounts of sleep.
That's
And
right.
so paying attention to that makes a difference. But that is really hard. And you're bringing up something, I think, that we don't talk about often enough. And it's one of the areas I really tap into and I talk about with all of my clients, specifically around sleep, because burnout will disrupt sleep and your cortisol
Totally.
curve more than anything else. And so then I love that you're talking about, being intentional around that. And sometimes it's really, as a parent too, it's really hard to be intentional when there's all of these outside factors that will disrupt your sleep. So it's like, well, what can I do other than this if I'm not getting sleep and I'm not getting, to do my hygiene routine that works for me? What can I do on the other side of that? And that is a big question. And then
Right.
you throw in, hormonal changes, whether it be that postpartum or if it's perimenopause for some of us, because I wasn't a mom till I was 30. So and I'll be 50. My eldest just turned 21 and the baby's 18. And, you've got all of these things that shift in your household and in your own chemistry. What are some of the things that, we can start to kind of look at? And as you sort of were unpacking your own sleep journey
Yeah.
in this burnout, what did you notice for yourself in that,
Well,
Rosie?
I mean, I think there's a lot to say. Like, we feel like the sleep part of things, right? So like, when you're in adrenal burnout, you actually are most tired because you're in the morning, right? So you actually want to sleep in, but my kid goes to a private school and I got to get up and I got to drive to school. So there's no work around that, right? But what we forget about is, sleep hygiene is a long process that could even start from when you get home from work or when you pick up the kids, right? So what can you do to stop that cortisol from shooting up at night, right? So I had to redo my schedule, right? I had to say, I can't see patients at night anymore. So I was doing things for my patients, and there were many days where I didn't get out of the office until 8:30 at night. So how are you going to work 8:30 at night, come home and be ready for sleep by 11? You're not. Right.
I'm thinking through this and I'm going, when I have late clients, it's just like, it's really tough. I don't do
It's really
them anymore
tough.
either.
But the thing is, I'm physically in the office at 8:30 in the morning. So I was doing these crazy long days. So I had to redo what I was doing and reprioritize, right? Now, I understand I own my own business, but this is like whatever your schedule is, right? So exercise at night does not work for me. I am like, if I have an idea, a thought in the middle of the night, I literally could get up and write. So I have to be careful. And, I use my blue blocker glasses at night. That was one of the greatest changes that ever happened to me, was really making sure this one thing really helps reduce the stimulation and the light from you. But we think of things as huge things, like I must be in bed by 8:00, right? And it's those little things, I can't have carbs. I really, really, really do best eating before 5:30, 6 p.m. 6 p.m. is kind of the cutoff. If I eat after 7, I have to prepare myself that I will not go to bed till later. That's me. And if I do eat at night, I should eat like a protein or a fat. and carbs will stimulate you. And these are those things that I just don't think we talk enough about to make people feel empowered to make these decisions. Instead, they go, well, whatever, I'll take an Ambien. Well, that's not really going to help. That's just a Band-Aid.
Oh my gosh, yes. And I love that you bring this up. This is something I talk about really frequently, and that is we have to look at how are we impacting our energy on a cellular level and where do we
Mhm.
control it first? Everything that goes in our mouth.
Absolutely.
And getting compassionately curious to experiment. And it sounds like you did a lot of experimentation
Yeah.
to just look at the data and say, okay, like for me, I learned that my carb threshold is like 18 to 24 grams a day. And
Ver
intermittent fasting, my happy spot is 16 hours.
Yeah.
But I
I'm
had
an
to
intermittent
play
faster too.
around. But
Yeah.
I had to try
I was
those
an
things,
intermittent
right?
faster before it was called intermittent fasting.
Me too. But
Yeah.
it's so funny because we have the world going, well, you need to eat this healthy breakfast and you need to start with it. I'm like, no, that does not work for my system.
You got to pay attention to the signals your body's giving you, right? And I think when you get in a stress, when the nervous system, right? Let's talk about nervous system dysregulation, right? So when your autonomic nervous system is your stress response system. And so I'm sure you talk about this all the time. But when we are in a relaxed state, we're in a parasympathetic state. I call it the hot tub state, right? So you're
Oh, I
like
love
in
it.
the hot tub and you come out and you're so relaxed. That's a parasympathetic state. Now, we should be somewhere in the parasympathetic state on the regular, right? But your nervous system isn't going to get there unless you're actively doing things to power down, right? So in order to power up, you have to power down. And we're going to talk about some power down strategies so you can power up. And when you are activated, I was telling you, it was like this insane week at work, and all of us had gotten sick for different reasons, and it was very stressful. And I get very calm in stressful situations, but when it was over, I was like, holy moly.
It's like this
And
processing and it hit.
yes. And I had so much gratitude that everybody was okay, because one of the situations was pretty serious, and it just makes you prioritize things. But my nervous system went into a sympathetic dominant state. It went into the, what's going on? What's going on? Now, I have a good nervous system. I'm not outside of burnout. And I didn't go into fight, flight, or freeze. But when you're very activated, you will go into a fight, flight, or freeze, and you will stay in the super activated state. And what happens is when you're in there chronically, you're in a chronic burnout state, right? Your whole body, its immune system, your hormones, your neurotransmitters, all moves to try to figure out what that stressor is. And it leaves the barracks, is what I like to call, and it moves to this encampment, and it's in this like, wait, where's the war? Where's the war? And it's very bad for our bodies. We drain all our nutrients. Forget about magnesium. Your vitamin D is going to go in the toilet. All of those, your iron levels can go really low because we're just in this constant activation state. And it's also why people who are activated, right? The more activated you are, the more activated you are. And people say, I feel like I can't get out of it. You have to actually do something to get out of it. You can't wish it away. You can't go and run. You can't do a cardio exercise for it. There is repair that is going to happen within your system. So that's why I love what you're doing and what you're talking about, because we are a culture that there's some kind of quick fix. And a lot of times it's purposeful, long-term, 30 days or more. Let's say that again, 30 days or more of managing different lifestyle components. And that's hard for people to hear, but I always look at when the ship goes down, right? My burnout in 2023, boy, a lot of blessings came out of that. I decided to do a lot of things differently. I decided to really streamline my business, to really only put myself into things that 10x my growth and really get rid of a lot of other things. I also made a real concrete retirement plan and an exit plan, which is why I'm training other people to do what I do. And that was a hard decision for me, and it wouldn't have happened if I didn't burn out in 2023. So I'm a religious person, and the path was put in front of me, and I'm taking it.
Roseann, oh my gosh, I have just like the happy tingles all over because you are speaking such truth in this. And I love the heart set that burnout, all of the things that were really hard were actually the gift, because if our hand hadn't been on the hot stove kind of thing, then we wouldn't have been paying attention in the way that we pay attention when things are disrupted.
That's right.
I talked about this recently. We're recording in early spring, guys, so that you know. And for a lot of you, you've heard that, and if you're in the unveilers community, you know. Just last month, I had my own big health event and lost consciousness and fell over the side of my bathtub, and they still don't know why that happened. And I was really afraid it might have been like a cardiac event because we have it in our family. It wasn't, thankfully. And 2 weeks after that, all 3 of my teenage boys were in a car accident. And it was pretty horrific for the youngest one. And so he still has, 4 months of physical therapy and, had plates and screws and pens and all this kind of stuff in his arm and wrist. And all of that stress built up, but it built up in a new way with a new awareness. And so I was able to use the unveiling method to sort of navigate my way in that. And I remember as I've gone to process through this in the same place that you've just shared, Roseann, and I really want to dig into a lot of these power down tools that you used and how do we start to break down those 30 days? Because I look at it and went, this is such a gift. And I'm so thankful for it because this has taken me to a new layer and a new level of managing distress, also recognizing new stress and eustress and how is that showing up? Because all of it does to a certain degree. And it's like, how are my thoughts? How am I also looking at my body? What are the stories that are playing as stress is happening? All of those things. But for me, it's been this really empowering place of going, this didn't happen to me. It happened for me. And this has been a gift because now I can take this and help my clients and help other people. So Roseann, I know, I hear that you're doing this. What are some of those power down things? What are some of the steps that you took?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think the number one thing is not to ignore the signs. And you said that really clear. And I hope your boys are okay. Cause see, I'm such an empath.
They are, thankfully.
I mean, holy moly. Right. So
that
one, we
want
appreciation. Yeah. Like in order to actually utilize tools, you have to take a step out for a minute and you have to look at yourself. Right. So are you somebody who has a trauma history? Because if you have a trauma history, you are used to chaos and you may not recognize those signs, and you starting to recognize it is the first step of healing. Number one. 2, if you are just somebody who's chronically stressed, give yourself grace. Know that you can reconnect to your body. And the first step of powering down is actually to connect to your body. So when we are stressed, we don't want to connect. We are actually a society, Americans are a society of disconnectors like you've never seen. Oh, I'm binge watching Netflix. I'm going to drink 6 drinks every night, but I'm not an alcoholic, right? Like I can control it. There's a lot of ways we as a society have made it okay to disconnect. That's never to say that you shouldn't have a day of disconnect, right? Like Friday nights, I like to do nothing on Friday nights. I do go for a massage every 3 weeks on a Friday night, but I really like to make that at like a self-care time. It's definitely a time where I get together with my teenagers and we try to watch silly things or we watch Guys Grocery Games. I love Guys Grocery Games. And but when you are stuck in a pattern that isn't serving you, it's a problem. So disconnecting is what you need to stop. So how do you reconnect? And there are many ways to reconnect, but as somebody who's a somatic therapist trained in somatic, right, it's about taking a bottoms up approach. So really it starts with grounding. So put your feet on the floor, right? Either standing or seated. And I actually do a lot of accessing. And if you're a neurodivergent, you have a very visual mind. I do a lot of accessing of kinesthetics and visuals because it's a much deeper way than talking about something. It's what's wrong with a lot of talk therapy. So sit down, and every time I sit down, I actually visualize my feet and legs as tree trunks, and I visualize roots to the ground. So I sit down, and it's almost like a heavy feel, right? And this is so easy to do, right? And literally do it all the time, 10 times a day, 5 times a day. Like, your brain needs a lot of repetition. I think that's really surprising to people. In order to really master something at an innate level, it takes a minimum of 34 times of doing something. If you are a neurodivergent or you're under a high level of stress, it's going to take 3 times that amount. So 100 times. So start with that. And when you reconnect and you force yourself to ground, you want to pay attention to the cues in your body, right? So, oh, I feel chest tightness. Oh, my head feels spinny. And you want to just take a minute, take 2 minutes and say, I experienced that, and kind of really hone in on that and say, what can I do to lessen that? It's really as simple as that. And your nervous system will find a way to move through that. Maybe it's really doing what we call belly breathing, which is another amazing power down method. It is the quickest way to regulate your nervous system. There is nothing as quick as deep breath, right?
Oh, yes. I am a certified breathwork and meditation teacher, and that is like the fastest way.
Fastest
As
way.
you're talking, and I love what you're talking about, because this is really, really important. And especially if you have been in the chronic cycle burnout loop, let's say like myself, for 40 years, it was decades
Yes.
of this. And it's one of the things that comes in, and Roseann, I would love to kind of hear your thoughts and how you kind of layer into this. I would hear grounding and I'm like, okay.
Don't want to do it. Adverse
Well,
reaction.
no, it
Yeah.
wasn't even that. It was like, I didn't understand what that concept meant.
Right.
But you mentioned something that was really finally when I understood, because I do a similar visualization of like the tree trunks and my roots,
Yes.
right?
Love it.
But I had to pair it with breathing to
Right.
sort of disrupt, shift the chemistry, and
Right.
allow my nervous system to kind of take a pause.
Yeah.
But it was this big place in that repetition. The College of London did the research into what does it take to create a habit, right? And sort of that 66-day sort of sweet spot. And, for those of us in stress, and definitely the trauma part, it takes longer, but it's building the repetition that your body can trust that this is safe.
That's right. That's
It's
right.
so important. Like breathing, I mean, so many of us hold our breath and don't even realize it, or we breathe very shallow. And all of this that you're talking about, and I worked with a client yesterday, and this is why it was sort of top of mind as you said this. We were doing a breathing exercise together, and I said, it was a micro recharge session. I said, okay, so what are you experiencing? How did this shift just in this breath cycle? And he started to describe, I just feel really heavy. I feel quieter, more calm. And I went, that is actually moving into what is described as grounding. And he went, really? I didn't know that's what that was. And I'm like, yeah, I didn't either. And all of a sudden, when your body gets sort of this heavy, but it's like this really good, sort of that hot tub heavy, like you were talking about. I love the hot tub term. That's so great. But it's like, we have to do it repeatedly. Because we're building this trust
right
within ourselves, right?
And also, let's be honest, like when we are chronically stressed, we're chronically activated, it is uncomfortable to stop and be quiet. And we, as most chronic burnout people, are overachievers. I mean, hello, right? And so we don't like that we instantly don't calm down. We're not instantly good at it. And I remember early in my meditation process, I went to a Buddhist temple and they were leading this meditation. And the best thing happened. He was like, I find meditation very hard. And I was like, what? This Buddhist monk of 30 years is telling us he finds it. And he was like, oh yeah, my mind wanders the whole time. And I was like, oh, I'm thinking about what I got to get at the grocery store, so he was like, it's okay to hum and, hum. It's okay to count. And I was like, it's okay to count. And it just kind of freed me. And it also made me feel, I'm not a perfectionist, by the way. I'm not a perfectionist, but when I set my mind to something, I'm damn good at it. Right. And I really I'm like, I crank out books because I don't care if there's a typo in it, right? Other people, my friends, take 5 years, but we have to give ourselves permission that this is going to be a learning process. And when you stop, you might notice some really uncomfortable sensations in your body. And the problem as to why you got to burnout is you've been ignoring it.
Yes. And then just sitting in, getting comfortable being uncomfortable, knowing that it's not a bad thing. It's just data and information to
That's
inform
right.
you to then make decisions with intention.
Right.
And I'm putting together, I love it. And I'm so excited. I'm putting together some shirts and some other things. It's like push through and have a big line through it. And underneath it, it says align.
I love it. That's right. That's right.
Because I talk about like that push through it crowd is what's killing us.
That's right. Because, it is, right? And we're all like, kids, I just want you to know, kids today are facing the greatest mental health crisis ever because they are not learning how to experience discomfort. And instead they're like, no, I don't want to be discomfort. We actually have to learn how to be uncomfortable for 60 seconds, a couple minutes, and then so that we can recognize it. So instead we're learning to push through everything, ignore it. And then guess what? Your body is not going to let that happen forever. It's going to burn out. You're going to have a breakdown. You're going to all kinds of things, and that is like, you can't. And I do feel that women are much more prone to this because, we're the short order cook. We're like in charge of this or whatever. And I have a great husband, no doubt. Right. And I have 100% woman-based team. I'm not saying I'll never hire a guy, but they haven't been able to keep up with us on our US and Filipino team. But we are nurturers, and that means we will put other people in front of ourselves. And we just like when my son was really physically and mentally struggling when he was very little, he got bitten by a tick at 22 months, and it was just a nightmare. It was like for anybody that knows about pans and pandas, I say this jokingly, but I didn't know if I should call a priest, an ambulance, or the police. Like his behavior was like, at times he was just out of his mind because the infection was making the inflammation so bad in his brain. And so of course I'm going to put my kid in front of me, of course. But if I had known, like I said, it was going to be this big old marathon, like I thought, okay, this antibiotic is just going to work, and then, 2 years and then another 2 years and then another 2 years. And so we have to make that time. And the thing about the nervous system, it is forgiving, right? But when it does burn out, you have to do a lot to fix it. But if you take 10 minutes every day to self-care, to really power down, to do these things, which none of us want to do, right? Like I used to leave yoga in the Shavasana part, right? Like I said, I don't have time for that. I just want to do the yoga part, right?
Get to the meat of the coconut and I'm going to move on.
Yeah, but I have learned like I must do that. You will be more attentive, more productive. You'll sleep better. You'll want to, have more connection to your partner, to your kids. You will have more joy in your life if you just pull back and power down. The question is, there's no one path. So to me, breath work is always a part of that. Like, there's no excuse not to do deep breathing 3 to 10 times a day. Like you just just like when I sit down, that's my habit. I ground myself. I reconnect. I do almost like a body scan. Where is there tension? Can I breathe through that tension? Can I go, oh, maybe I'm tense because I didn't do this and this. You better cancel this and make sure you get home. For me, magnesium baths are just one of my top priorities. Like, but I know after a magnesium bath, I'm literally like Jell-O and I have to just crawl to bed and go to sleep. But, and also in perimenopause, you need a lot of magnesium, like a lot of magnesium.
It's crazy.
And so
I didn't realize it until I was like, oh, vitamin D was so low, magnesium,
right,
all this stuff. And you're like, holy heck, no wonder I'm exhausted.
No wonder you're exhausted. But even when you're in a chronic stress state, male, female, doesn't matter, you will burn through magnesium. It's the most used nutrient in the body, and between 3 and 600 processes in the body require magnesium as a cofactor. And so, and for brain magnesium, it's L-threonate or L-glycinate. That's what it is. So I've even created my own magnesium just because I didn't feel there was a great one on the market, and there wasn't one created by a mental health professional for kids and families. So we created this line called Neurotastic, and it's called Multi-Mag Brain Formula. And it's just,
I have it up on my browser now because that's
good. It's designed to like get right in there to the brain, but you do need the better quality forms. All the magnesiums are good. When I take a magnesium bath, it's magnesium sulfate, right? But I need a magnesium bath a minimum of twice a week. And when I experience a lot of stress or there's hormone dysregulation, I actually will do a magnesium bath every day. So just to get me through the hurdle. And it's something, again, it's a power down to reset. It really deepens my sleep. So all of us need to know that when we shortchange sleep time or quality, there's going to be a negative effect. And it doesn't matter if you could get away with that in your 20s and 30s. It's not going to last forever. You're not going to be able to do it. Now, older people do sleep less, but they have a different lifestyle, right? So they can sit on the couch and relax. I'm running to school. I got to do this. Oh, you forgot your computer. What? I got to drive home and get it. My younger one has the best memory in the whole world. My mother had the memory that was like Mary Lou Henner, the contextual memory where she could pull up a day. So I have a slight version of that. It's different. But my dyslexic 13-year-old has a very close version to her. So he's forgotten his computer or something for school maybe 3 times in his life. And I remember the last time, and I was like, look, you got a better memory than me. This happens again, you're at school with no computer today. And he was like, okay.
Okay, I'll own it.
But I was like, that was something that I was like, it's a stressor, right? I mean, in all honesty, he does it so little. Of course, I would have went back, but most kids forget things, and that just can be a trigger. So you have to, in order to really improve your life, you have to look at what's bringing chaos in your life. What's causing that? When you reconnect to yourself and you say, wow, every time I sit down after lunch, I feel this way. Maybe it's the food I'm eating, right? Maybe it's this relationship that I have with this friend that I've outgrown, but I don't know how to end it, right? So there are many things that can be contributing to us. And one of the benefits of getting older is knowing yourself better, having a better voice, and being clear about it. And I think one of the things that adults do terribly, and women probably more than anybody, is setting boundaries. And setting boundaries is not meaning that you're hurting somebody. It's such the opposite. It's really being clear about what you need. And people will, I don't want to say take advantage, but they will push your boundaries if you don't set them. And they need them too. So you're you're actually serving them, and it brings clarity to communication, right?
I love it. And that's one of those things as you were talking about the boundaries, because we talk about this. And for a lot of us in late identified life, we had this conversation for the last several years. It's like, boundaries, what? No one talks
Mm-hmm.
about this. We didn't grow up hearing this. This wasn't a dinner table conversation. And then when we start talking about boundaries, it's like, oh, but I don't know about that.
I don't want to hurt their
and I'm like,
feelings.
right. Or we go to this extreme of like, I'm going to put up like all these hard, rigid, like big, solid boundaries. And I'm like, well, that might be where you start as you're getting comfortable. But then we work back to like, what's flexible. But boundaries I have become, and I've kind of gotten to this place in my life. It's like, boundaries are the most beautiful, loving thing that I do for myself and the people that I love and care about, because
Definitely.
boundaries are just the rules that help. That's the framework, the structure to help meet the number one nourishment key that brings energy in for me. And when I'm doing that, I'm loving and nourishing myself, but I'm also helping guide other people. And by modeling this, giving them a place to go, oh, I can set up these support structures that help nourish my energy as well. And isn't
Love
that
that.
beautiful?
I mean, so beautiful. And it's a reframe, right? When you let
Yeah.
go of the worry and the guilt associated with it, and you think of it as a loving act for yourself and others, it really is so helpful, and it's helpful for you because there's a lot of reasons why people burn out. It's not just working 12 hours, right? It could be the energy pull from you, right? So, one of the ways to power down is actually to be mindful of the energy around you, right? So, do you have the wrong people around you? Is there something you can do to limit, right? So, maybe your mother-in-law or father-in-law is really difficult, right? So what can you do to change that relationship, right? Like there was somebody in my life that always wanted to start an argument after about 2 to 3 minutes of conversation. So I learned to have 2-minute conversations or talk about neutral topics. So the neutral topic for us was cooking. So at 2 minutes, I would be like, oh, do you have a recipe for blah, 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 blah? And they were an older person and they could talk about cooking for hours. And it really made our relationship so much better. And these are those kind of things because, you're not going to change somebody, right? I have a family member who has a crazy political viewpoint and I love them. And I love them like crazy and I wouldn't want to not, but I have to say, no, we're not talking about this. And my kids are like, don't talk about this. And they listen to my kids, which is really cool. Right. So how can you set these, how can you change some of these relationships without feeling like it has to be a conflict? Right. And I'm being mindful that again, a high percentage of people with burnout are neurodivergent, have trauma. These things may be harder, but we have to think about things as an energetic field. They're pulling from you. So what can you do to preserve it? And how can you actually do more things that bring joy into your life, right? And I think that is something we don't think about. When we get chronically stressed, we don't take a minute to crank up the music and have a little dance in the kitchen, right?
Unless you sign up for a micro recharge session.
There you go, right? So I love it, right? But I love that you're saying micro because I always say the magic is in the micro, right? And little waves make big waves. They don't start off as big waves. And so in our instantaneous, magic wand culture, which I normally have a magic wand in my desk, but it's not here. And
oh, no, that sparks my joy.
Yeah, it's a sparkling magic wand. Where is it? So it's off my desk. But anyway, so we don't appreciate the micro. So one of the best ways to really power down is actually to reflect on very small things. We make a lot of our clients, and please know the people that I serve typically are kids and families, so young adults down. Not that I don't work with adults, and they tend to have PANS, PANDAS, OCD, anxiety. So they're really dealing with a clinical mental health issue. And we take like a systems approach, and we also use brain-based tools. But what we really need to do is get them to celebrate those wins. And we often do it with a wins journal. So we make them write down micro wins, not allowed to put any big things on there. So that you get to retrain your brain, because when you're burnt out, you're thinking like this, you're not seeing what's here. And it's a really powerful, powerful way to get your nervous system to actually self-regulate.
Oh my gosh. And all of you guys listening that are unveilers, you're in the unveiling method, you know this as appreciative rest.
Love it.
Oh.
I love it. And I didn't even know that you did that. So, and I'm very much an evidence-based girl. Everything I talk about has science behind it. My own book has 41 pages of research citations. I don't mess around, but there are a lot of brain-based tools. I mean, breath work, meditation, it's free. It's easy. You just got to do it. Right.
And you take it with you everywhere you go.
Exactly. But I love tools that help the nervous system regulate, like neurofeedback, PEMF, biofeedback. I'm sure you've talked about heart math. There are tools when your nervous system is in a higher level of disrepair. And it could be because there's a clinical issue in addition to the burnout, right? And so, you definitely need care. There's no workaround. Love supplements. You already heard me talk about magnesium. It is my number one most recommended. I would say magnesium, D, and zinc are probably your 3 most important. Always check with your provider. But magnesium is so safe. The only side effect is you take it to bowel tolerance. If you take too much of it, it will loosen your stool. But we all are deficient. 70% of the US population is deficient in vitamin D.
Yeah.
And it's important for those. So there's a lot of ways to support your nervous system, but you need to take minimum of 10 minutes a day for power down strategies.
Oh, love it. And we're going to have links for all of the multi-mag products down in the show notes. And I know that you guys are probably chomping at the bit to know what kind of tools and resources, how you can go get some of these from Dr. Roseann. So number one, go check out the podcast. So share a little bit about the podcast and what they're going to get when they show up.
Yeah. So I have a podcast. It's called It's Gonna Be Okay. You can search science-backed solutions for mental health and behavior because we put the keywords up front. But it's really a resource for parents who have kids with neurodivergence, mental health issues. And it's all about science-backed solutions that are going to help you change your kid's brain naturally and effectively. It's been a really awesome joy for me to do that. It's mostly short episodes that are under 15 minutes, and lots of value in that. And you can go to drroseann.com, drroseann.com, and everything is there. And you can click on podcast right there, and it's on all the major platforms.
So we're going to have all the links down in the show notes so you can go connect. You can check out all of her amazing books. You can look at all of the magnesium products. You can check out the podcast. But then we're also going to have a couple of resources down there. So Roseann, you have some fabulous list of statements. Tell us about this and how as parents we can use this to help our kiddos.
Yeah. So I think one of the biggest stressors for parents is when their kids can't manage their own stress, right? And so we learn to parent from our parents, and times have changed. And doesn't mean your parents didn't do beautiful things, but we need to have actual, what can we say to a child to help them manage stress? And so I've created this resource called, it has over 100 coping statements. Parents love this. They often download 2 or 3 of them and keep them in different places. And you go to teletherapytoolkitbonus.com. It was part of one of my books. And it's free. It's free download. You can grab all these different ways to help your kids cope depending on what's going on. And then we also have, I know you want me to talk about my 7 days to self-regulation, the Calm Parenting Challenge. You go to drroseann.com/regulated. It's a challenge that's super easy. It's email form. It's like 2-minute videos, quick little things to do, all things, actionable things that you can do that day to help your nervous system self-regulate. Because we didn't say this, but we should say this. And I think this is probably the most important thing out of all the things we're saying, because all these things couldn't be more important for one reason. Your child co-regulates off of you. So the more dysregulated you are, the more difficulties your child's going to have. And so we can meet our kids' anxiety with our own anxiety. We can meet it with anger, their anger with anger, or we can meet their anger, calm, dysregulation with calm. And the research shows us that the more we got it together, they will be more regulated. And so even for you should take care of yourself for yourself. But I know a lot of moms aren't going to push themselves until they hear that. So give yourself the grace. Make sure you're taking 10 minutes. I don't care if you have to hide in the garage. Don't hide in the bathroom. Everybody comes and finds you there. But you owe it to yourself.
They will even unlock the door and come in.
Yeah. I had a friend, her kid was very dysregulated. And she's like, I think he has ADHD. I was like, he doesn't have ADHD. Okay. He's just dysregulated right now. So I was like, you're going to have to get it together. And she was like, I'm going to get up at 5 a.m. and I'm going to meditate in the morning. I was like, well, nobody told you to get up at 5 a.m. She's like, nope, that's the time it works for me. And she said so quickly in 30 days, the whole climate of her whole family changed. And she talked to him differently. She used those coping statements. I was like, Becky, you need these coping statements. And she was like, I was going to diagnose him with something, but it was more than that. And we had to change. So, and that doesn't always happen, but it will always improve things.
That's what we're looking at. We're looking at those little micro wins that we can have. We're looking at what are the small things. It doesn't have to be massive.
That's
We're
right.
looking at how do we start to build this, and really kind of give ourselves that 30-day window. Because y'all, 30 days goes by fast. It goes by
Fast.
way faster than you think.
Think about your 18 years with your baby.
Oh my gosh, I blinked my eyes. It really does.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here today. This has been a fantastic conversation. The resources, the insights that you have shared today have just been phenomenal. Guys, please go get the tools. Go check out the podcast. There are so many wonderful resources. I'm going to go get the magnesium. I'm going to be bathing in magnesium myself. Thank you so much for being here today. And just for that one last thing, the one thing that's on your heart, if you could just tell one burnt out, really stressed out parent today, what's just that one thing you want them to know, Roseann?
Yeah. I mean, we've all been there with worry with our kids. And I think one of the things that I see parents do that's the greatest mistake is to get stuck in the worry and just take one micro step towards one thing. Don't feel like you have to do every little thing. Maybe it's the breath work we talked about. Maybe it's a magnesium, but change isn't going to happen if you keep doing the same thing. One of my favorite quotes is Einstein. The definition of insanity is to keep doing the same thing and expect a different result. So be gracious to yourself, but here's your kick and your tuchus. One thing, do it for 30 days and change will happen.
I love it. Thanks so much for being here. And guys, remember, Self-Care September isn't just about these airy-fairy things that we can't pinpoint. We've just given you some concrete tools and insights. Be loving, be patient, be kind, and most of all, compassionately curious just to see what might this do to change my energy today. Take care.
Thanks for being here. It's been quite a ride. Energy mastery, let's turn the tide. Top shelf guests, dropping wisdom bombs. Join us next week, where the energy's strong. Beyond chronic.